Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Coach Cast with Coach Jim Glogowski. I'm one of your co-hosts today, Chad Birger. I'm going to be joined by a co-host, Sam Dooyema, and we are going to talk about the University of Sioux Falls' big win this past weekend against Concordia-St. Paul, and then we will preview the upcoming matchup for the Cougars at Minnesota State University Moorhead. So, to begin, let's go ahead and jump right in to review the win against Concordia-St. Paul. You can see that it happened on October 7th up in St. Paul, Minnesota. The Cougars won 35-28 to improve their record to 3-3. The scoring summary, the Cougars put up 13 points in the first quarter versus Concordia's 7. The second quarter was a 7-7 matchup, giving the Cougars a 20-14 lead at the half. The third quarter, Concordia came out and took the lead with a touchdown and PAT to put them up 21-20. So the Cougars were in a position where they were trailing going into the fourth and put up 15 big points in that fourth quarter. Concordia answered with a late touchdown to narrow the gap to 35-28, but that was the final for the game. The scoring summary for the game: in the first quarter, Travis Yonke scored on the opening drive on a 6-yard pass from Camden Dean. The Nick Hernandez kick was good, putting the Cougars up 7-0 right away. Then Concordia-St. Paul answered with their own drive. Jalen Richardson capped off with a Jalen Richardson 2-yard touchdown run. PAT was good, tying the score at 7. The Cougars scored on the next drive with a Dean to Carter Slykehouse 13-yard touchdown pass. It was a 73-yard drive, and that put the Cougars up at the end of the first quarter 13-7. Second quarter, USF scored on a Mark Leonard 10-yard touchdown reception from Adam Mullen. Hernandez kick was good. And then Concordia, late in the second quarter, capped off a 11-play, 72-yard drive with a Troy Ellison 5-yard touchdown run. As I mentioned, the Cougars went into halftime with a 20-14 lead. In the third quarter, there wasn't a whole lot of scoring, but the lone touchdown of the quarter was a Richardson 8-yard touchdown run. The PAT was good, putting Concordia up by a point going into the fourth. And in the fourth, we'll talk about what happened later on, but Matt Grzybowski scored on an 11-yard touchdown run. There was a 2-point conversion that was good on that one to put the Cougars up 28-21. And then Connor Aldrich on the next drive had a 50-yard interception return for a touchdown, known as a pick six to the kids these days. Nick Hernandez kick was good, putting the Cougars up by 2 scores, 35-21 at that point. And then Concordia had a late drive, that 7-play, 95-yard drive that was capped off with a Richardson 1-yard touchdown run. But the Cougars were able to recover the onside kick and close out the game. As I mentioned, the Cougars won 35-28 over Concordia. Next up, we'll have Sam come on in and read us the stats.
Yeah, looking at the stats from Saturday, a relatively even game across the board. Total yards favoring the Cougars, 473 to Concordia-St. Paul's 399. The Cougars getting it done through the air with 272 passing yards to Concordia's 215. 201 rushing yards for the Coup for 184 for CSP. There were 8 penalties for 60 total yards for USF and only 3 for Concordia-St. Paul. And we're going to talk about the rash of penalties a little bit later here. First downs, 26 for the Cougars, 18 for the Golden Bears. Third downs, the Coup went 7 for 13 and Concordia went 6 for 11. And a key fourth down conversion for USF, going 1 for 1 and none for Concordia. And relatively even time of possession between the Bears and the Coup, with USF holding the ball for 31 minutes and 40 seconds and 28 minutes, 20 seconds for the Bears. Both quarterbacks got playing time this past week. Camden Dean was 16 for 26 passing for 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also getting 73 yards on the ground on 10 carries. Adam Mullen was 3 for 5 for 42 yards and a touchdown, as well as 1 interception. And on the ground, Dylan Rundigan had 17 carries for 89 yards. The key touchdown that Chad mentioned by Matt Grzybowski, who had 8 carries for 45 yards in that late touchdown. And Carter Slykaus, having a huge day for the Q. 11 catches, 134 yards, as well as the touchdown. And spreading the ball around to the tight ends. 3 catches, 39 yards, but 2 touchdowns for the tight ends. And we also want to shout out the freshmen this past week getting involved. And I know that's been something coaches talked about in previous weeks, but Christian Janis, again, having a catch for 45 yards on a deep play there. And Adonis Hutchinson, 2 catches for 37 yards as well.
All right. Well, that covers the Cougars win. Statistically, if you want to read the detailed stats, you can go to usfcougars.com and check out the detailed stats. But let's go ahead and bring in Coach Glow to talk to us a little bit. Coach, what are some of your initial reactions from the big win over Concordia-St. Paul?
Well, first off, really pleased with the kids' effort. I thought we talked quite a bit on Friday night in the hotel about, going out there on Saturday and getting to the second half of the season. Obviously, at halftime of that game, it was going to be the exact midpoint of the season. I just felt like we wanted to define who we were. We've talked about what are the qualities that a Sioux Falls Cougar football team has, and we talked about the winners win mantra. We talked about what does that look like, what does that mean, and ultimately you have 7. Well, now we've got 5, I guess, 5 games left to show that who we are. And ultimately, I thought the kids played really hard, responded to some adversity. I really never felt like we were in jeopardy of losing the game. It sounds kind of crazy to say that, even when it was 21-20. I felt like offensively we were moving the ball really well and just kind of shot ourselves in the foot on the one drive. But I just really pleased with the effort, really pleased with the outcome. And good football teams do good things, and I think they don't hurt themselves. And we didn't do a lot of stuff to hurt ourselves with poor snap on special teams or stuff like that, or major penalties on defense. And so, we're a work in progress, but I was really pleased with the progress we made from last week.
Coach, you mentioned how your offense was really rolling in the game on Saturday and scored on both of your first 2 drives, but Carter Slykaus he was 7-11. He was open all day long on that, in the opening couple series there. Tell us a little bit about, how you guys got off to such a hot start offensively.
Well, I think a lot of it stems from offensively. The guys are starting to get really comfortable with the system. Carter's really starting to understand the things that we need out of him, and he's a clutch player. And I made this comment after the game on Saturday that, if this was the NFL and we had free agency, I'm pretty sure every team in the league would be interested in signing Carter Slykaus to be one on the waiver wire. But he's just an incredible receiver. He understands how to sit down in space. He's tough. One of the biggest catches he probably made in the game was the onside kick at the end. He goes up in skies for that thing, and he blocks downfield, and he shows up every day with a hard hat mentality. And just love the fact that the kid's always ready to go and doesn't say a whole lot. But he's been doing that stuff all year for us, and he's a guy that we want to get the football to. He's a guy that can make plays with the ball in his hand, and he can make people miss too in space, which is huge.
All right. Well, Coach, the offense had a couple points in the second quarter where they kind of stalled a little bit, and a lot of it was due to penalties. Do you want to kind of discuss any? I don't want to get you in trouble or get you fined with the league or anything, but
No, I don't want to discuss penalties, Chad. You know that, and
I know that.
Referees, I don't want to say anything about that. No,
I hear about that. Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I could put my finger on it. So if you look at the stats and all that kind of stuff, I think we are one of the most penalized teams in the league. And I don't know, like I said, but yet on the flip side of the coin, it doesn't seem like that as many penalties are being called against our opponents. So, I don't know. It is what it is. Those guys, it was a good crew on Saturday. They do a good job. And I think I mentioned this too on Monday nights. We're fortunate enough to have the commissioner, Aaron Lind, and the head of all the official crews. I think there's 7 different crews. So they're on a Zoom call along with the head coaches, and you can kind of go over plays and you can talk about, what you had questions about. And I've asked some questions and sent some film in. And, it's not about like hey, gotcha, you made a bad call, we should have had this call, but it's more about learning what they're looking at, what they're calling. And, quite frankly, you could call holding on every play. It would dramatically slow the game down. I thought on Saturdays, my issue was we had more delay game penalties with the play clock than we have all season combined. And it was all in the one same drive. And I said, what is going on? And at halftime, the referee's like, hey, we'll look into it. I don't know. A couple of times they missed at the play clock from 25 to 40 and vice versa. So I don't know. I try not to get too worried about that kind of stuff. I can't control it. And just like I tell our players, don't spend time on stuff that you can't control. And I want our kids to play physical and aggressive and that kind of stuff. And I guess it is what it is. It's one of those things that, if I could put my finger on it, I'd wave my magic wand and we'd be way better. But we got to stop hurting ourselves with penalties and untimely situations like that. And because obviously those things will cost you.
All right, Coach. Speaking of that, you talked about the 25 versus 40-second play clock. A lot of our listeners and viewers out there might know what that refers to, but what's the difference? When do they set a 25-second play clock versus a 40-second play clock in a game?
Yeah, so the rules have changed a little bit from last year to this year. No longer the clock no longer stops on a first down unless you're under 2 minutes in the first half or 2 minutes at the end of the game. So unless you're in the second or fourth quarter, the clock doesn't stop on a first down like it used to. And ironically, we're seeing probably anywhere from 5 to 10 fewer snaps per game. I don't think we've been over 75 or 76 snaps yet as far as facing it on defense. And typically you'd find a couple weeks where they're in the upper 80s, So that's the first change. And then what ends up happening is once the ball is spotted, there's a 40-second play clock that starts. And you have 40 seconds to snap it before the next, before it's a penalty. Well, if there's a penalty or any kind of, incident on the offense, the play clock goes back to 25 seconds. If it's on the defense, let's say defensive holding or something like that, then it goes back to 40 to benefit the offense. So obviously it doesn't always go to 40. We had a situation up in Duluth where, Amari Grosskopf lost his helmet, and that was a defensive issue. So the play clock should have gone back to 40 seconds for Duluth. Well, in that game, the clock never went back. And so the referee was trying to do one of these things, where he's resetting the play clock. Well, in the meantime, by the time they eventually set the play clock back to 40, about 20, 25 seconds, it had eroded from the game clock. So not only do we lose that 25 seconds, then the offense got a new 40 seconds to wind down, and it ended up costing us at the end of the game. So, I had a conversation with the head of officials about that, and those are the kind of things that I try to bring attention to is just the game management issues of things. Whether it's a holding call or not, that's a human error thing, Interestingly enough, we do not have instant replay in the Northern Sun. We actually voted on it this offseason. There was a form of instant replay using iPads on the sideline that the MIAA league actually uses. And so when we go down to Pitt State here in a couple of weeks, we'll actually have instant replay on the sideline because that's an MIAA institution. So there's some things that are going on in Division II. They're trying to make the game better. But, yeah, long story short, that's the difference between a 25-second play clock and a 40-second play clock. And, trying to educate our kids this year on the clock stoppage and those kind of things. Because I know people in the crowd, I hear them all the time getting all worked up with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in a game, and the guy goes out of bounds and they don't stop the clock and people are screaming about the clock running. Well, it only stops inside of 2 minutes.
Coach, I was just, for those of you listening online, Coach Glow did a great job of actually demonstrating officials' mechanics during that segment. So if you want to tune into the YouTube section of this just to catch that. It's worthwhile. He's
that's just a natural for me. Back in the 90s down at the Char Bar in Vermilion, raising the roof. I did that all the time back in the day. So that's actually no big deal.
All right, Sam, go ahead.
Coach, do you feel like the new stoppage rules are benefit to, I guess, two-part question, benefit to you as a Division II institution, but also to your style of play? Or is that something you feel like they decided to come up with a solution for the so-called long games, which we all know is an issue due to commercials and advertisements, but that's for a different podcast for another day. Or is it just something you just need to adjust because the rules have trickled down? Or do you actually feel like it's a benefit having less plays when you're running 75 instead of 80, 90?
That's a great question, Sam. And I think what we see at this level is a lot of trickle down effect, from targeting. And like we had a targeting, as you probably know, earlier in the season, the first game of the year, and they called targeting. It was a 15-yard penalty. It helped keep the drive alive, and the young man was removed from the game. At halftime, they had the ability in Division II to actually watch those clips in an office on campus, and they actually watched that clip and said it wasn't targeting. Well, the worst part about it is it doesn't matter that it's targeting or not targeting. They still got that 15-yard penalty. So essentially, they got a 15-yard penalty for something we didn't do. That would be my complaint. And ultimately, my thing is that we have to look at Division II a little bit different than Division I because we don't have some of the technologies and the infrastructure that those schools have. But there's no doubt the trickle-down effect is real, and some of those things kind of take a while to get passed down to us. Another example is the redshirt rule. So for Division I's, they've had a rule in place for a while now where a kid could play in 4 games and still maintain his redshirt. Well, this is the first year that we're seeing at the Division II level, which to me makes common sense. But as we all know, sometimes common sense doesn't rule the day.
Well, Coach, I'm going to get back to the Concordia game here. Leading by 7 points at halftime or 6 points at halftime, 20-14. Come out in the second half. Concordia had deferred the coin toss, so they received the opening kickoff. Your defense held them to a big 3-and-out right away to start the half. Then the offense came in, and Adam Mullen started the second half and threw a kind of a key interception that ended up costing you a little bit.
Yeah, it's we got a lot of faith in Adam. Obviously, we can plug him in at any time. We were talking about this with our staff yesterday. We have a luxury that a lot of teams don't have, where you can all of a sudden play 2 guys, and the second option is not too bad. And you might talk about the interception, but I would talk about the 95-yard touchdown drive that he led us on earlier in the game. So, the positives are that he's ready to go make a play. I think he just didn't see the linebacker on that one. It looked very similar to the 2 interceptions that came through last week versus Augustana, where we just didn't see that linebacker coming in. And kids make mistakes just like coaches do. So, it was no big deal to me. We just got back on the horse and kept riding. But, at halftime, I felt pretty good about things, and so as the second half was starting and we got the 3-and-out and obviously the offense gets on the field, I'm looking for Cam. He was tied up in the training room, and this is crazy. I know I probably shouldn't even say this, but then he went to go get his helmet, and he had left his helmet in the locker room. While CSP officials had locked the locker room because we left for second half, he couldn't get his helmet. We had to get somebody to open the locker by the time he got out there. So, again, you talk about Division II, trickle down, and a little different here, and then we're across the street in the basement of the admissions office where our locker room's at. Yeah, it's comedy. It's comedy of errors, and at the end of the day, whether Cam's out there or not, I felt good about Adam getting out there, and the interception really had nothing to do with whether Cam would have played or not. We were rotating those guys on a serious basis. So, either way, we were ready to roll with whoever was out there.
Well, Coach, that did lead to the Concordia go-ahead touchdown there in the third quarter, the interception. But then right at the end of the third quarter, you guys were able to generate your own forced turnover with a big fumble as Concordia was driving down inside the 10-yard line. I don't remember who popped it out, but it looked like Joseph Sapp got on top of it right at the end there. That was kind of a huge, momentum builder for the team.
Yeah, and the crazy part about that is we had a couple opportunities to kind of hold them earlier in that drive, and he just kind of slipped out of our hands a couple of times, and I think it was London Cole that forced the fumble, and ironically, I think we missed the tackle, and the kid keeps going to towards the goal line, and then we hit him again, and he fumbled. So go figure where a missed tackle pays off in our favor, but that's kind of the nature of the game, the nature of our season a little bit, but. Yeah, the biggest thing about that is the hustle to the football. We've really been preaching that to our kids to swarm the football, surround the football. And, it's one of those things. I just saw it in a football game last night with Christian McCaffrey. The guy was getting ran over from Dallas, and he pulled the ball out as he's getting run over. And so, whatever you can do to get the ball out, you see it on the NFL games all the time, in college games, the instant replay where guys are punched at the ball. And it's certainly something we talk about. It's certainly something we emphasize. And, sometimes it works out. You put your shoulder pad right on the football and you have a bunch of guys hustling and you recover it. And that was a huge momentum changer for us. But again, we weren't really panicking because had they even scored there, it's still a 1-score game. And, I just felt like we played from ahead for the most part this past weekend, where in a couple weekends in the past, we've been chasing points. And I think when you're playing from ahead, it creates a better sense, better confidence on the sideline. And that certainly fumble recovery was huge. And, we were able to capitalize.
Yeah, capitalize on it. You did. Drove the ball 93 yards and scored that Grisbowski touchdown there to start off the fourth quarter. And then next possession, Concordia just the quarterback was rolling right, threw one back across the field to the left a little bit, and Connor Aldrich made a break on the ball and ended up picking it off and returning it 50 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to our defensive staff. They worked really hard last week, and we're a very similar defense, shockingly, to Mankato. And so when they played Mankato, they had run that kind of double move route where the guy on the outside receiver breaks to the post, and then he sticks his foot in the ground and cuts back to the sideline. And we had talked about that all week long, that as those guys get aligned in a certain alignment and they start getting vertical together, you're going to get that switch exchange route. And Connor did a really good job of, when Mankato played it, the guy was so deep, he couldn't get back fast enough to stop the pass. And the way we had played it was, we said, hey, listen, you don't have to get so much depth, Connor, because he's throwing that thing all the way back across the field. So it's more of a width issue than it is a vertical issue as far as catching the ball. And so if you just fall off that route, you should be able to get there before the ball gets there. And sure enough, give credit to Coach Cap and Coach Taylor, those secondary coaches, and also Brady Crawford. I think that's the other piece of it. We've kind of been getting roasted about our ability to sack the quarterback and get pressure, but I thought we did a pretty good job all day long of forcing that quarterback to move in the pocket, and that's going to be absolutely huge this coming weekend. But Brady Crawford was right there in his face when he threw it, so that affected the throw. Guys hustling, and then Nate Tillich got in a way just enough in the way of the guy to return the touchdown, and it's just a good defensive play. But I think when you start having confidence in executing and understanding what teams are doing, and you can focus on certain schemes or certain things that happen in the game, then you can kind of pounce on those things and take advantage of it when they happen. Earlier in the season, just trying to get lined up and are we looking at the right key? Like that's like, undergrad stuff, level 100 classes in the beginning. Well, now we're getting closer to 200 and 300 level classes. And then hopefully in the future, we're graduate school or Sam and doctorate level stuff, right? So we're really talking about, like, do you really understand what they're trying to do? Backfield alignments, guys pulling, chasing pullers, all that stuff. We're starting to get to the meat and potatoes of how to be a better defense versus just the skeletal structure of getting lined up and knowing what to look at.
Great analogy, Coach.
Well, I got a few letters behind my name, but it usually ends in SKI. That doesn't say the same thing as MD or PhD, but we'll work with it.
Well, Coach, you gave up a couple long passes to Concordia right at the end there. They ended up punching one in to get it within a one-score game. And then they attempted that onside kick with just under 2 minutes left, 1:48 left. What do you guys work on with onside kicks to make sure that the other team doesn't recover those?
Yeah, ironically, Nick Hernandez is really good at doing onside kicks. And obviously we have the best kicking coach in the country working with those guys. Shout out to Al Hansen, and we would do that every week. We work on that. And so Coach Littlejohn, our special teams coordinator, he coaches those guys up. Obviously they had, I don't know if you noticed, they had two kickers there. So they kind of keep you a little bit off balance of which way the ball is going to go. But, we talk about how to attack the ball, how many, you can actually step in front of the 10-yard line and catch the ball without them being able to make contact with you. So we talk about if he, dribbles it to go get the ball, don't wait on it. So, and then, you just kind of cross your fingers and pray that the bounce isn't too crazy and it doesn't bounce off somebody's hands. And the kids executed that really well. And so that was really positive. Those are the things, again, if you want to be a good football team and a good football program, you have to execute those plays when you're onside kicking it, and then you have to secure the kick when people are trying it against you. And I thought for the most part, those are things that you practice on during the week. It may not happen, but a couple times during the season, and you've got to be able to handle that. But, I will say this, the touchdown drive at the end has probably got as much to do with me as anybody else. I was after Coach Cap to get after him and pressure him a little bit. And he was like, I don't know if we should pressure him. We're up by 14. And, probably Tom Frederick and Chad Birgers of the world telling me we don't sack the quarterback enough. I got all amped up. Maybe we should try to get some sacks so I could take some pressure off my Monday morning Zoom call with you guys and maybe get a few sacks. So I got a little anxious, got a little amped up and told him to get after him and kind of put Kane McWilliams in a tough situation there. And then I think he was a little bit maybe still dwelling on the last play, and they got us again. And so, yeah, in hindsight, probably should have played more of a softer defense backed up. But, yeah, is what it is. Just felt like we could end the game right there up by 14, be aggressive, force the issue. And I want our kids to feel like we're always attacking. We're always being aggressive. We're always getting after people. I don't want to ever be, in a sit-back mode. And, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But, you play a prevent defense, and a lot of people will tell you you're preventing a win, and I just didn't want our kids to feel like we didn't have an aggressive mindset at the end, even though we were up by 14, especially if we're up by 7, maybe it's a little different, but up by 14, we get a sack there and the game's over. And so that's on me. But you think about it, I think they went 90 some yards in the last drive and finished with whatever they finished with, 390 yards. We don't let them drive the ball down the field there. It's a 300-yard game on defense, and we're feeling a lot better.
Yeah, Coach, I'll take part of the responsibility on that one as well.
Well, I appreciate you owning up to it. That's refreshing.
Yeah. Sorry for putting you in that position. So week 7 coming up here. Cougars, as we mentioned, are 3-3 right now. The opponent this week is going to be MSU Moorhead. The game's going to take place on Saturday, October 14th, up in Moorhead, Minnesota, at beautiful Alex Nemzek Stadium. Kickoff is scheduled for 12 o'clock p.m., another noon kickoff, another early one for you, Coach. If you're at home and you want to tune into the game, you can either watch on the NSIC network. If you do that, you might have to, I don't know what the announcers are like up there, but you can press mute and you can tune in on to KWSN and listen to two of the best in the business, Tom Frederick and Tim Hyatt. They'll start their pregame show at 11:30 on 98.1 FM, 12:30 AM, or KWSN.com. So, Coach, what do we kind of expect to see out of Moorhead this week?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, it's a football team that could very easily be 6-0, and that's not an exaggeration. They had a couple opportunities against Mankato in the fourth quarter where they missed 2 field goals and went for it on 4th down. They maybe could have kicked a field goal if they had a little more confidence in that. But and then Mankato goes down the field and kicks a field goal basically as time expires to win 24-21. And they really did a great job of stopping the run. They absolutely shut down Mankato in the second half. I think they only gave up 3 points in the second half, and that was that last field goal. So defensively, they move around quite a bit. They stem the front, which means they bounce back and forth before the ball snapped. They play really hard. They seem to be a veteran group. They know what they're doing. Little disclaimer here. So Coach Littlejohn, obviously, he's going back home. He coached at Moorhead for a while before joining us this past offseason. Offensively, Jack Strand is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's a big kid, 6'4", 225 pounds. They ran the football one time. They had a running play versus Mankato. So they are going to throw the ball 60-plus times. It's going to be like backyard football. They're going to line up in 5 wide receivers and have guys running all over the place and getting open. And they're really, really talented at getting open in space. And they're going to take what you give them. And not necessarily throwing the ball over the top and all that kind of stuff, but throwing the ball in space. They've got some really talented receivers that are really quick and athletic. They're a scary team. They really are. I mean, you look at their schedule there, and they had Augustana do a 1-score game at Augustana. They beat the brakes off Northern. They obviously beat the brakes off Minot. I don't know much about McKendree, but that was a non-conference game they got after them early in the season. And they had their chances to beat Wayne State. I think it was 27-24, maybe I might be mistaken, but I thought it was a closer game than that. But anyhow, long story short, yeah, Jack Strand is the real deal. He's an all-conference performer. I mean, that's 2,235 yards in 6 weeks is incredible. I mean, he's on pace for almost 4,000 yards passing and 40 touchdowns. Like, those are NFL numbers. So they're really good. They're really good at what they do. They're not going to try to run the ball down your throat. They're going to try to throw the ball over the yard, and we got to be able to tackle in space and score some points.
Do the Cougars plan on switching anything up defensively due to the different scheme that you're going to see from Moorhead?
Chad, are you asking me to give out our game plan on Monday?
No.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, we're definitely not going to play the defense we played against Minot. That's for dang sure. So, but it's a lot like Minot, and that's a great question. Minot was such a different animal, right? A completely different defense, a completely different week. This week in practice, it's very similar, but just from passing concepts. So, typically we'll do 2 days a week of inside run drills, right? Where it's just the O-line, D-line, and linebackers, running backs. I don't know that we'll do inside run this week because we're not going to see any run game at all from Moorhead. And if we do, it's going to be inside zone, which is a pretty standard play. But they're going to be in 4 and 5 wide receivers all day long. And so, obviously, multiple defensive backs on the field, maybe having only 3 defensive linemen on the field. Those are all things that are on the table right now. Dime package, a dollar package, a nickel package, all those fun terms that you talk about. But just getting more, smaller, mobile, athletic guys on the field and less clunky D lineman, linebacker types. We'll see about our depth and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to employ some different strategies for sure. It's one of those games where, when you're playing a team like this, for them looking at us, hopefully they don't see anything on film from the previous 6 weeks that will help them. Hopefully we'll give them some things they haven't seen, try to confuse the quarterback, get him to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. And then we got to tackle in space. They're going to catch the ball. If you throw it 60 sometimes, you're probably going to give up 300-400 yards passing. That's just the way it is. But we got to make sure we make them earn everything and force them into some tough decisions. And then if he makes some mistakes, you've got to capitalize.
Sorry, Coach. Sorry for putting you in that rough spot again here.
That's all right. We're in our mid-season stride, Chad. We're feeding off each other pretty well here.
We'll go ahead and wrap up here with our mailbag. We got a few viewer questions that came in over the past week and weekend. The first one is Juice had written in and was wondering, what would you say are the areas that you've seen the most improvement for the Cougars so far this season?
The biggest thing that I've noticed is just the confidence level. Again, I saw those kids playing with a lot of fire and passion and emotion. And early in the season, when there was a lack of confidence or maybe being, a little bit nervous and all that kind of stuff, you're seeing our kids start to grow and develop. The camaraderie has been outstanding. The road trips have been a blast. The kids are doing the right things on and off the field. And I see just the team growing and maturing right in front of my eyes. I see the guys that were, before asking a lot of questions that are now posing deep in-thought questions like, well, I know we do this, but if this happens, can I do that? Like they're starting to think the system and think the way that we want them to. And so that's probably the biggest thing. And ultimately, I think we're just playing, we're playing more, we're playing faster. We're playing freer, if that makes sense. We're playing, less worried about making mistakes. I just want them to have fun and get after it, give everything they got. And they're doing everything that we ask of them.
Go ahead, Sam.
Coach, so you haven't been a head coach since 2015, and now, like you said, we're halfway through the season. So how has the transition back to being the guy been from a decision-making standpoint on game day? Has it been like riding a bike, or have you been put in situations where like, oh man, I don't know how I would call that again?
It's been awesome. It's been a blast. The support, the administration, the alumni, they've all been awesome. I get texts after games, win or lose, and so I've enjoyed that piece of it, and I'm trying to just enjoy it, to be honest with you. I think last time I was a head coach, I was a bit younger. I think I was in my early 30s, and, as silly as that sounds, not just from a football experience, but from a life experience and family and kids and all that and dealing with people of this age, I think I just, I'm not afraid to, at the last minute, to change something, and sometimes that drives our coaches crazy. But, for example, we're on fall break and want to feed these guys, and so last night at 8 o'clock, I told the assistant coaches, hey, you're responsible for feeding your position group breakfast this morning. And just for fun, just to see how those guys, what they're going to get them. I can only imagine what the O-line coach is going to get the O-line. And I'm sure the quarterbacks will have, Starbucks and apple rollover twist or something fancy like that. But, it's just doing stuff like that, trying to keep it live. On the bus ride, I know if you ask Tim and Tom that they get a charge out of our who's behind that door game we play on the bus to find out who your roommate is because we switch it up. I'm just trying to find ways to make it light and have the guys have some fun. And, when we get to Saturday, I don't say a whole lot, to be honest with you. I've learned that too. I used to think fiery pregame speeches were all the rave. And now I say very little. Our kids lead the pregame prayer. Amari does a great job with that. I say, hey, let's roll, and we go. And there's not a lot of talking then. I do a lot more talking earlier in the week. I do a lot more focus on team and coaching the coaches. I'm really fortunate that we're able to have 3 full-time coaches on offense and defense. And so I have a position I work with, but I don't call plays on Saturday. So I have no call sheet. If you watch me, I get the best seat in the house and I get to control the game. It's like sitting in your recliner and saying, instead of yelling about calling a timeout, you get to actually do it because you're in the game. So that part of it, dealing with the kids, the emotional part of it, trying to be a manager of emotions and ordering pizza after the game, all that stuff, hotel reservations that I never really did the last time as a head coach. I'm diving into that aspect of it to kind of handle that stuff so I can let the coaches coach and then coach the coaches. So, just a different experience like anybody else, as I get closer to 50 and, towards the twilight of my career, the end of my career here, the experience I had the last 27 years, I'm trying to use those in a positive light and make sure that we understand that winning is the ultimate goal. We want to win every football game, but the way we go about it, how we take care of ourselves, how we handle ourselves, that's important to me, making sure the bus is clean, making sure the locker room we leave behind is clean, and talking more about developmental stuff down the road than just flat out, do we win or lose?
Coach, you mentioned Tim and Tom. Midcoast Sports Magazine is actually going to do a feature story on Tom Frederick, who's been calling USF games for over 25 years. What does it mean to have Tom and Tim, calling the games for the Cougars?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier I spent several years coaching, and this is by far the best broadcast team I've ever been a part of. I look forward to working with those guys. It's awesome having them on the trip and having two guys. Some places only have one. We have two guys that are there every game. We have a gentleman by the name of Chad Birger on the sideline for home games, so that's big time. I'm still waiting for my halftime interview as I walk in the locker room, though. That's the only thing that we're missing. But as we talk about, those guys in general, and especially Tom, so Tom, I don't know if people know this, but Tom was calling play-by-play for the Coyotes back when I played. So he was the play-by-play guy along with Sugar Daddy Joe Van Gore from KVHT back in the day. Those guys were the voice of the Coyotes with RJ Pattison back then. And so I've known Tom since I was a 18-year-old freshman. And so now to be working alongside him, he's so professional. He's so prepared. He comes to practice. People don't know he's at practice almost every day. He's asking about players. He's talking to players. I mean, at this level, you've got a Hall of Fame broadcaster right here in Sioux Falls doing Division II football. And he's so modest and humble. He would never tell you that. But he's a legend, in my opinion. It's long overdue that Midcoast Sports does a spot on him because, I mean, he's a legend. He's been here for so long, and he knows so much history. And to have somebody that invested in a program and to know so many former players is really mind-boggling. And I just enjoy his professionalism. I mean, I feel like those guys, both he and Tim, could hop on a broadcast for South Dakota State, Iowa, Nebraska, and you wouldn't miss a beat. They're that good. If you go in the radio booth, they've got their charts, they've got their stats, they've got anecdotes about players. They take the time to sit at the dinners and talk to the players and coaches to have stories to tell. I mean, those guys are phenomenal, and we're really, really fortunate to have those two guys. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Those guys are outstanding.
I completely agree with that. And that sideline reporter, he's getting to that level, but not quite to the same level that those guys are. We have some technology some range limitations with that field mic. That's why we can't do that halftime.
Oh, see, that was what I was looking for, man. I thought we have a sideline. I used to see you on the sideline when I was at Mankato, and I was like, man, you probably don't even know that I was eyeing you up. I was like, this guy over here.
I remember you saying hi to me. You were like, "Hey, Taco John's guy." I remember that. Yep.
What you ready for, Coach Glow? You're gonna get an interview at halftime, and you're not gonna be in the mood for it. And you'll be like, "Get out of here, Chad." No.
Well, it's perfect. We can have it sponsored by Taco John. Tell those guys to pay for a more expensive reception and get those guys to do the halftime spot. That would be phenomenal. Come on, NIL deals. Let's go. Start thinking that way.
We'll see what we can get worked out here. Well, that kind of wraps it up. Coach, do you have any parting wisdom here for us before we head into week 7?
No, it's like I said, and I mean this as well. It's awesome having Sam on the call here, a former Cougar himself. It's just I just love the fact that people care, and I understand. We laughed a little bit, pre-show here about the bandwagon getting lighter, getting heavy, and that's how people care. And to me, that I understand the expectations. I understand what we're trying to accomplish here. We're a work in progress, but we're working really hard. And I just appreciate all the support. And we had a great crowd up there at CSP. We have to go back to, another homecoming event. I mean, it's crazy. We're either somebody's 100th victory or somebody's homecoming game. So it's awesome to have environments that matter, and looking forward to getting up to Moorhead and then hopefully getting back with the win and getting ready for our next home game.
Well, thanks so much, Coach. We'll go ahead and wrap up the show with talking about the Coup Football Legacy Association. The Coup Football Legacy Association's mission is to bring alumni, family, friends, and supporters together to help equip the USF football program with the resources necessary to continue its winning legacy. For more information on the Coup Football Legacy Association, check out their website, www.couplegacy.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the QR code on the screen and take a look at that. You can also check us out at one of the home games, next home game at the tailgate party. Jump right in, ask around. We'll give you more information on that. So that is it for this week's episode of the Coup Coach Cast. For Sam, my co-host Sam Dooyema and Coach Glow, thanks so much for tuning in. Stay safe, my friends, and go Cougars.